markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Mai Rodriguez. Catch up with us on Business Brief. Asian shares are mostly lower as optimism faded over President Donald Trump's proposed tariff deal with Japan, followed by a similar agreement with the EU. Analysts say markets are now watching for developments in U.S.-China trade talks. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng are meeting in Sweden. Bessent indicated the talks may result to an extension of current tariffs, but there were no major updates after the first day. South Korea's Kospi is currently in the green, while China's Shanghai Composite and Australia's AXX are both flat, but on opposite sides of the line. The rest are in the red. In the currency markets, the US dollar is flat against the Singapore dollar, Hong Kong dollar, and Thai baht. The Australian dollar is also flat against the greenback, but the US dollar appreciates against the South Korean won, but depreciates against the Japanese yen. In commodities, gold prices are up by nearly 0.2%, while oil markets are mixed. In the cryptocurrency space, both Bitcoin and Ethereum are up. The Budget Department warns of possible delays in the implementation of government projects if there will be changes in next year's National Expenditure Program. This after President Bongbong Marcos said during his SONA that he would veto the 2026 General Appropriations Bill if it is not aligned with the NEP. Budget Secretary Amena Pangandaman said the president is serious in making sure that there will be no major changes in the NEP. She added that the 2026 NEP that will be submitted to Congress 2 weeks after Marcos' SONA underwent an extensive process before it was finally approved by Marcos. Last July 15, Marcos approved the proposed 6.793 trillion peso budget for 2026. The Department of Tourism will focus on building a globally competitive tourism industry that generates more jobs for Filipinos. That's the reaffirmation of Tourism Secretary Cristina Frasco in response to President Marcos' directive to boost efforts to bring jobs to the 4% of Pinoys still unemployed. Frasco says the task ahead is to find opportunities for the remaining jobless Filipinos. She also vows that the DOT stands ready to meet Marcos' challenge. She adds that the agency is committed to building a tourism industry that is globally competitive and grounded in a shared mission to uplift Filipino lives through dignified, sustainable work. An industry leader says the country's semiconductor exports, which make up 5% of global demand, are facing flat growth this year amid tariff risks and geopolitical uncertainties. Speaking to BNC's Business 360, SEIPI President Dan Lachica said the industry expects only modest recovery this year after back-to-back contractions in 2023 and 2024, with exports possibly growing by 6%. While semiconductors were kept off the U.S. tariff list, Lachica still pointed out that foreign direct investments in electronics continue to flow into Vietnam, a key competitor, due to more attractive trade policies and infrastructure. He then urges the government to fast-track support to keep the Philippines competitive in the global electronics market.
If you're talking about the 19% tariff, reciprocal tariffs for the Philippines, and Vietnam, our biggest competitor for FDI, is at 20%. Hopefully with the Create More Act, with the improvement in the ease of doing business, which could still be improved, we'll be able to attract more investments. But it's not going to happen overnight. So we just need to continue improving our policies.
Filipinos based in the U.S. also monitored President Marcos' fourth SONA. They urged the president to do more in protecting Filipinos there from the Trump administration's crackdown on migrants. More from our America correspondent, Don Tagala.
Small business owner Dan Samonte just opened a cafe restaurant in New York City over the weekend. Their best-selling drink is iced ube latte that uses an imported ube extract from the Philippines. Aside from coffee and pastries, Mary Coffee also offers Filipino rice balls or silogs with some Philippine-made ingredients. As a newly opened business, increasing their price right away may discourage customers, so he is planning to absorb the price increase initially.
I will try to maintain it first. I want to keep the customers. I don't want to give a high rate, especially we just started. I'll try to absorb. So we'll source a different vendor or locally or a different area if possible, if the price will go up.
Meanwhile, dozens of Filipinos gathered at the Philippine consulate in New York City on Sunday for what they refer to as People's Sona. They are protesting against the impact of Trump tariffs on Filipino Americans like Samonte. They also criticize the Philippine government's perceived weakness in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's 19% tariff on Philippine imported goods entering the U.S. market.
It's a lose-lose situation for the Filipinos in the Philippines, for the Filipinos and the people here in the U.S. who are the consumers who will foot the tax. The tariffs is a form of bullying by Trump, and that Marcos Jr. basically gave in to the bullying. And so instead of actually fighting for the Philippines, standing up for the Philippines, he just gave in. Actually, he gave in to 0% tariffs on our end.
The Philippine president acknowledged the contributions of overseas Filipino workers in his SONA speech. But protesters here say Filipino immigrants in the U.S. need more than that. Filipino seafarers and undocumented Filipinos need more protection from President Trump's harsh immigration enforcement that has detained and deported Filipinos, including those with legal status and those without criminal conviction. For many of those unjustly detained by ICE, such as green card holder Kuya Max Landonio, and was later released, he says, he felt like he did not get enough support from the Philippine government as they went through Trump's rough immigration enforcement.
I'm here not because of the action of the Philippine consulate or its government, but the advocation of the true people that did that for me.
That's why protesters like Mike Legaspi is sending out a loud message to Filipino Americans that it's time to stop asking what the Philippine government can do for them, but what they can do together to help themselves.
Huwag umasa sa gobyerno. Kumbaga yung sinabi namin na isang people nation dahil tayo na lang din ang magiging may akda ng ating kinabukasan.
For Filipinos here in the East Coast, as much as they're calling for the Philippine president and his administration to do their part in assisting Filipinos in distress, they have finally decided to just take these matters into their hands to help their kababayan. Don Tagala, Bilyonaryo News Channel, New York.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. calls out corruption in flood control projects in one of the most striking moments of his State of the Nation address. He orders a full investigation after recent storms laid bare the failures of multi-billion peso flood mitigation projects.
Kamakailan lamang, nag-inspeksyon ako sa naging epekto ng habagat ng bagyong Krising, Dante at Emong. Kitang-kita ko na maraming proyekto para sa flood control ay palpak at gumuho. At yung iba, guni-guni lang. Huwag na po tayo magkunwari. Alam naman ng buong madla na nagkakaraket sa mga proyekto. Mga kickback, mga initiative, errata, SOP, for the boys. Kaya sa mga nakikipagsabuatan upang kunin ang pondo ng bayan at nakawin ang kinabukasan ng ating mga mamamayan, mahiya naman kayo sa inyong kapwa Pilipino. Mahiya naman kayo sa mga kabahayan nating naanod o nalubog sa mga pagbaha. Mahiya naman kayo, lalo sa mga anak natin na magmamana sa mga utang na ginawa ninyo na binulsan nyo lang ang pera.
Senate President Francis Cheese Escudero brands as a demolition job allegations that he made multi-billion peso insertions in the 2025 national budget. In a press briefing this morning, Escudero said there were changes in the budget and the total was around 600 billion and that it was part of their job to make changes in the budget.
So kung totoo man yung sinasabi nila na 150 billion ang binago ng Senado, nasaan yung 500 billion yung pagbabagong yon? Saan ang galing? At bakit nila pinagtutuunan ng pansin yung mas maliit, hindi yung mas malaki? Sunod, nabalita na sa akin yan. Nagagamitin laban sa akin yan kaugnay sa isang demolition job, kaugnay sa napipintong halalan ng Senate President.
We're taking a short break. More business stories are up next. You're watching Business Brief. President Ferdinand Marcos made no mention of online gambling in his latest SONA, despite growing calls for a ban. But Finance Secretary Ralph Recto says a ban is unlikely and stronger regulation is being considered. Sujin Kim has the details. Go ahead, Sujin.
The Marcos administration's fourth State of the Nation address made no mention of online gambling, a notable omission amid rising public and legislative scrutiny. But earlier today, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto clarified the government's stance in post-SONA briefings.
Pinag-aaralan pa. Hindi natapos pa ang SONA. Pero clearly there will be additional regulations and possibly new revenues. But it is not a tax measure.
Recto added a total ban on online gambling could backfire, driving all activity into the illegal underground market.
My personal opinion is stronger regulation and more revenues. Because I don't think if you ban it, magpo-proliferate lang yung illegal.
Current estimates suggest that 60% of online gambling operations in the Philippines are unregulated. A blanket prohibition, Recto warned, would merely shift the entire industry outside the reach of regulators. Rather than prohibition, the Department of Finance is exploring stronger regulatory controls and measures to raise revenue. One option under study is a possible increase in the gross gaming revenue or tax, currently at 25%, to rates as high as 30%, 35%, or even 40%. However, Recto noted that an excessively high tax rate could be counterproductive and fuel the growth of illegal operators. The DOF is conducting this review in coordination with PAGCOR. The finance chief also distinguished online gambling from offshore gaming operations, or POGOs, which have been associated with scams and criminal activities. According to the secretary, the current discussions on regulations focus on domestic online gaming markets, which present different risks and dynamics. In parallel, Recto addressed concerns over the economic impact of the recent zero-tariff agreement between the Philippines and the United States. Although final estimates are still under review, the initial projection is a potential revenue loss of 3 to 6 billion pesos, primarily from removed duties on imports such as soy, wheat, pharmaceuticals, and vehicles. Meanwhile, on the issue of semiconductors, Special Advisor to the President for Investments and Economic Affairs, Frederick Go, confirmed that the sector remains exempt from U.S. tariff increases for now.
As of now, the U.S. is exempting it. I don't know what action they'll take. That's not for us to decide. That's for the U.S. to decide.
He noted that future policy shifts depend entirely on the U.S., and the Philippine government has limited influence over those decisions. And those are latest updates from San Juan City. Back to you, Mai.
Thank you for that report, Susan Kim. New Energy Regulatory Commission Chair Francis Juan sets his sights on resetting power rates, which have gone unrevised for over a decade. This is a move that could impact millions of electricity consumers nationwide. In an interview on BNC's At the Forefront, Juan says the commission will review whether current rates still reflect the actual cost of providing power and if adjustments are long overdue. He also plans to speed up the approval of power supply agreements to unlock new energy investments and reduce grid congestion. To bring electricity costs down long term, Juan is pushing for more local energy sources and closer monitoring of off-grid areas.
We depend on imported fuel. So if we are able to develop more and more indigenous sources of energy, then at least we are insulated from any drastic changes in energy prices worldwide. So we have to make sure also that we have enough capacities coming in at the right time.
U.S. President Donald Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited Trump's golf course in Aberdeen, Scotland on Monday, marking their first face-to-face since Starmer took office. The two leaders arrived on board Marine One, circling the grounds twice before landing at the Trump International Golf Links, Aberdeen. This golf course is Trump's second in Scotland, and he's set to lead its official opening on Tuesday. The visit comes amid a new chapter in U.S.-UK relations and a signal that personal diplomacy could still pave the way for stronger ties ahead. Philippine shares fall after President Marcos's fourth SONA. The PSE index ended lower by 0.8% to close at 63.25, finishing the day as the second worst performer in Asia. Among the sectoral indices, only property ended in the green after closing flat with an upward bias, with services falling the most at more than 2%. Decliners outpaced advancers at 111.270. Total value turnover reached 6.9 billion pesos. Majority of the day's most active stocks ended in the red, with Bloomberry Resorts falling the most at nearly 10%. Meanwhile, the foreign exchange market, the peso, is currently trading at 57.26 against the greenback, depreciating from the previous close of 57.20. That's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Mai Rodriguez. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business. Only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. See you then.